Good morning and welcome to the Hour Show. I'm Awa. This is part 2 with Marjorie. Marjorie, we just left it where we were talking about crimes, that crime number 1, which you believe is with the white collar in our society.
It's actually the most costly type of crime, and it's the most ignored type.
Yes.
And yeah,
but because they know how to do it.
Yes. they do it within the guidelines of the system.
Exactly.
And even though it's corrupt, it's not as considered as serious.
Yes.
As if I hit you in the face or shoot you or something like that. I think our whole value system, we need to examine our value system.
Totally.
Our value system has gotten really bad. I remember, I'm old enough to remember back in the day when people really paid attention to values, and it meant something to have good values.
Totally.
And communities were smaller, families were closer, there was extended family.
Yes.
Today, because of all the changes that have occurred in our society, we've lost a lot of that connectedness.
That's right.
And we need to find it back. And I think, and I'm going to give you a compliment, your show is really a good opportunity to bring people together to talk about what's important and to make positive changes. MNL Magazine is another resource where Neely Barocas is making a huge effort to bring people together for the spiritual good of everyone.
That's right.
To promote peace and to promote well-being in the community.
That's
we
right.
really aren't a community anymore.
No.
We're fractured.
Even though we all walking around saying we are one and I love everybody, it's good to love. There's one thing about saying it and feeling it. Right. And then step 3, living it. It has to be something you choose. All of us, we're free to choose.
Right.
And earlier we were talking and I was like, our system is so broken that the power is given where it should not be.
Right.
And taken away where it's needed.
Right.
My son is 2 years old, goes to school, and they call me and say, oh, he just fought with a little girl. And I'm like, well, take care of it. No, we can't. There's nothing we can do. Come and pick him up. So can you believe if each of us from work have to go because they can't even clean the booger of the child? I mean, I think we should give more power to those teachers who are doing a wonderful job already. Mm-hmm. And maybe take it away from people who are really abusing it. Again, watching that show last night didn't bring anything. And I don't think it can help anybody to see such violence in our TV.
It's almost voyeuristic, those kinds of shows.
It's like,
I don't even...
I was shocked. I was shocked that anybody can have any pleasure or learn anything watching that.
Right.
It's not possible. So, yes, where do we start? At home. I totally agree, at home. But we have to have really the resources, the support we need to start at home.
Right.
Have to be mentally okay. Most of those people in jail maybe come from abuse.
A lot of them come from abused families.
Exactly.
Abusive families, yes.
Exactly. And yes, understanding that we are half human, half animals. We have instincts, and most of the bad things we do rise from there.
Right.
More understanding our instinct.
Well, we operate on emotion. We think we're logical, but we're really not.
No.
If I stomp on your foot, you're not going to say, oh, would you please not do that anymore? You're going to get upset, you know?
Unless I do the work enough on myself.
Right. It has to come from...
Exactly. And I think that's where we should start as a society, is already knowing that we all have those instincts. Mm-hmm. But what we're doing is avoiding them, feeling like it's not there until it's there, then we want to judge it and throw you in jail without you understanding even what happened. Most of the time they don't.
One of the things that I found so interesting, for some reason I connected really well with my students, and they connected with me, and they shared a lot with me and talked to me about everything, and not really just classroom type of things.
That's
we talked
beautiful.
about life, you know.
Yes.
And one of the things I learned that was fascinating to me was that so many of them are like, you know, when you put pressure on the earth, you get a diamond.
That's right.
When you put pressure on a human being, they're either going to go berserk, like you just talked about, or they're going to rise above it. And I had people that were amazing poets and writers and artists and such beautiful expression. I've got 2 notebooks at home, binders, full of things that were made or written by inmates.
Yes.
And someday I'd really like to have an opportunity to show somebody this stuff because it's so remarkable.
Add it to your book.
And well, I thought about it, but I don't know if I can do too much of that. But it's just amazing what, nobody is all good or all bad.
No.
Everybody's done things they shouldn't have done in the past.
That's right.
And everybody's done good things.
That's
and
right.
we tend to say, well, these inmates, they're all bad, and these people over here that live in South Beach, they're all nice, you know. And that's not the case.
That's not the
and
case.
so we have a very unrealistic picture about our society and how it is, how it really is. And we know there's a lot of corruption, but we kind of tend to glaze over that. And then what you were saying earlier, we put all the anger and frustration on these inmates that are in jail, and they are already victims of society.
That's right.
To start with,
That's
most
right.
of them.
And being there, can you tell us about the guards? I mean, we talk about the inmates, but it's not easy to
Well, the officers are taught. I actually took a couple of courses in corrections when I was recertifying for my teaching certificate because I wanted to know more about how the system is programmed. And the officers are taught 2 things. It says on the sign, it says corrections and rehabilitation. But that's kind of not really what happens.
It's correction and corrections.
Right. And the correction officers are taught 2 things, contain and control.
And they understood.
So if they get people with mental health issues, they usually give them medication to keep them calm, you know, or they lock them up. And the rules are arbitrary. Every time a new officer comes into a unit or a new captain comes to a facility, all the rules change. There were times where I was allowed to bring food on a holiday for the inmates to have a little party, and there were times I was not allowed to bring absolutely anything. And there's a written rule and the unwritten rules.
Right.
But the jail operates on the unwritten rules, basically.
Yes.
Because each officer, each person, you know, we're not consistent, and people aren't consistent.
No.
In raising kids, we know mothers aren't consistent.
That's right.
Well, the officers aren't consistent either, and there's some that are naturally nice people that really do try to make it comfortable for the inmates as much as they can.
Yeah.
And that there are officers that are there because they like control and they're control freaks. They want to manhandle people. They enjoy that abusive behavior.
Yes.
Being able to exercise that.
Okay. Now, you just mentioned those 2 different officers. You being there, did you see that the inmates changes also?
Oh, absolutely. The inmates will come and tell me about all these things because I only had one officer in my classroom, and she and I got along very well. She was a very good officer, and I really didn't have any problem with her, but the stories I got were from inmates about officers, what happened in the unit. And there's some officers that would come in and say, okay, the whole unit's on lockdown, just because they didn't want to do anything.
Okay.
So they can lock them all down, and they don't have to function.
So what I meant by asking you that question, were the behavior changes?
Yes.
Along with the officer who was in charge?
In all of the years I worked in jail,
yes,
I never had one fight in my classroom, never. And in the units, there are fights almost every day. Now,
yes.
I realize there are more people in the unit, and I realize that all the inmates didn't all come to school, because the ones that came to school wanted to better themselves.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was a little bit different. But I think the way a unit functions, there are usually about 70 people that live in a unit.
That's a lot of people. How big is the unit?
Well, the units, I can't tell you square footage wise, I'm not very good at that. I'd say maybe 40 by 40 in the main room.
Yes.
And then there are individual bedrooms off of the main room where there's 2 inmates to a room. And it's
Okay.
beds and a toilet and a sink, and I think they have a desk or something like that.
Don't mean to cut you. We'll be right back with more of Marjorie.